Welcome in episode 4, Speaking Sports 2024, college football in full swing. Razorback Dave and B-Ray on the line with me today again to hash it over, see what's going on.
Big weekend, son.
It was a big weekend. Big games, had to have them.
Had to have it.
But okay, so I'm just going to go right to it. Texas and Georgia. There's a lot to unpack with Texas and Georgia. I mean, everybody already knows the game. They know who won. They know the score. You know, they know the plight of it. I mean, even to the point where Sarkisian switched quarterbacks for a minute. I thought he should have stayed with Manning. I did one thing I didn't, even though Manning made a mistake, he would have adjusted a little better to the speed of the ball game. He was not he was getting rid of the ball a lot faster than Ewers was. And you had to.
It looked like it.
You had to. And then they decided to go back. When they decided to go back to Ewers, you know, I just don't think it did them any favor. I don't think they were going to win the ball game. They were in over their head. I just think they ran into a buzzsaw.
Yeah, they did. And Georgia's better, and Georgia's played in a lot more big games like that. We talked a little bit about this last week about in Texas's biggest game of the year is against Oklahoma. It's at a neutral site. And they have big games at home. But that was a pretty jacked crowd and a lot of energy. But, you know, Georgia plays in that environment 4 or 5 times a year. And so I just think they were just better equipped to handle it. I mean, you think a couple of years ago, Texas went up to Arkansas, and then that's, you know, lower half of the conference team, and Arkansas banged them around because I think they got a little intimidated up there that year. And so they just got to get used to it. They got players, and they'll be okay. But it was just better. Georgia's that's been their game for the last 5 years.
I had contended that Texas really hadn't played anybody. I was looking at their schedule. They beat Colorado State. They beat a Michigan that was pretty highly ranked at the time, but I think you're seeing that they're not as good as anybody thought.
Yeah.
Right. Texas, San Antonio, Louisiana, Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma. They really hadn't played anybody of substance.
No.
And that notwithstanding, any one of those SEC teams they played already could beat them, and they could lose to any one of them left on their schedule. And I just don't think they're not used to that. That's a mindset that you have to develop. And they probably don't have it yet, you know.
They don't. And they'll get around to it. But, I mean, every week, I mean, it's a battle whether you're playing Mississippi State or Arkansas or Ole Miss or Kentucky or South Carolina. They've won some games. Hell, Vanderbilt beat Bama. Arkansas beat Tennessee. Tennessee beat Bama. I mean, there's a lot. It's a lot. It's hard in that league, especially on the road.
Yeah, and then you look at a team like Arkansas that was really up after beating Tennessee, took a bye week, and then got thrashed by LSU. And I'm going to tell you, LSU was just a better football team. They were bigger. They were stronger. They were faster. I mean, we couldn't do anything with them. We couldn't get a run game going. We couldn't stop their first down plays, and I think they had a really high third down percentage, and they won the turnover battle. And we were actually never in the ball game, and I wasn't really upset about losing it so much like maybe the loss to Oklahoma State, because I thought we were better than Oklahoma State. We weren't better than LSU. They were just good.
Yeah, they have NFL bodies all over that roster. They always have. And they're responding to, you know, Kelly kind of challenged them all after the USC loss earlier this year, and they're responding, and they're getting better every week, and they're going to have to be. That's a team to be scared of, is LSU, if you're at the top half of that.
Yeah, and A&M's laying there really, really quiet. You know, I'm looking at their schedule. Well, I say I'm looking at it. I'm not really. I just pretending to. You know, they've lost to Notre Dame right out of the hat, but since then they haven't looked back. You know, I'm not sure who MCN is, but they beat Florida, beat Bowling Green, beat Arkansas, beat a number of a ranked Missouri team, beat Mississippi State. But you know what? They got Saturday night, LSU.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a quagmire, and
it is.
And I think they're lighting it. And before we get to the rankings, I do still want to kind of trip back to the Texas game real quick. There was a really bad call on a third down that would have forced Texas to give the ball back to Georgia after they had scored. I think they were getting some momentum, and they were kind of getting back in the ball game, and Georgia had thrown an interception, and they called pass interference on the play
on
Texas. And on that play, Texas intercepts the ball and runs it back to the whatever yard. I mean, like inside the 10. It was a 1st and goal. And really the first good thing to happen in Texas the whole game, except they called the pass interference. And then the fans started throwing water bottles on the field. Now, I've been listening. We're taping on Tuesday, so I've been listening for the last 3 days, different takes on that. What's your take?
On the fans or the call?
Just on, not so much the call. Well, both really. What, if any, influence did the fans have on the call reversal?
I would like to say none, because I did not think it was pass interference on Texas.
It wasn't pass interference.
Yeah.
No, it clearly wasn't.
I think it was a mystical flag. And one of these shows, we're going to get into the mystical flags. Yeah. And so, and I think they got together. And, of course, the crowd was obviously getting riled up about it. I don't really think the crowd had anything to do with that. I mean, that's happened before. People have thrown stuff on the field and because they had been happy with the call. And I think two things. I think the refs got it right, which is always important. You know, I read something that said that one of the refs came over and said, "Hey, look, that really wasn't pass interference." And I got to talking about it, which leads me to believe, you know, are they just really talking about it on the field, or is there a voice in the press box looking at the replay going, that's not a penalty? You know, because in NFL now they'll call a penalty, or they'll, instead of like on a spot the other night, one of the games I was watching, they changed the spot from the booth without a replay official. They were like, "Hey, ball was mismarked, we moved it." And so that may be new in the NFL, but it makes me wonder if there are officials in the press box looking at video, helping out on something like that. And then it goes back into the fans. These games, it is so expensive now. Now, granted, this was the student section, but they have to pay, I'm sure, to go to these games.
Oh, yeah, they still have to
something. Pay. And so you're getting into a point now to where the game was hyped so bad, and all it takes is one idiot for a bunch of idiots to follow.
Yeah.
And so, you know, after one person threw down there, then another threw, then all of a sudden everybody's throwing. But I don't think it had anything to do with changing the call.
I think one of the things that I heard was that we had set a new precedent that now the fans can have influence over officiating.
Yeah, that's
now,
right.
What I think the fans did do was buy the referee some time to discuss it.
Correct.
While they cleaned up the field.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and then what you have to ask yourself, had they not thrown the stuff on the field, would they have had the time to come together to discuss whether or not they wanted to change the call?
Oh, no.
I don't know if they would or not. And then, and the other thing, towards your mystical flag comment, I think that was Texas pretty much saying, "You ain't gonna be throwing mystical flags on us. We're just not gonna play that."
Hey, we're the ones that invented the mystical flag.
That's right. In the Southwest Conference, they invented the mystical flag.
Yeah, you know, and Alabama created the mystical flag in the SEC.
Yeah,
and Miguel Del Royal used to walk out there and they'd pick the flag up.
Yeah, well, I've seen them put time back on the clock for Alabama.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And so
wasn't always a great idea, but
no, it wasn't. But yeah, I think that's the flip side of that. Yeah, well, if it helps them, but I don't know. You know, it's interesting. I haven't read anything. What did the conference say?
They fined them $250,000 and are trying to force them to gather up as many people as they can that did it and punish them, which I guess is looking at seats where the debris would have come from and find out who was sitting in the seat. You ain't never going to be able to prove none of that. I mean, you're just going to make money for lawyers is all you're going to do with that deal.
Well, I mean, it's one of those Well, that's a waste of time.
Oh, absolutely.
Unless you just got a video showing every seat in the building. Well, hell, which they may do it now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got most student sections are general admission, so you don't know who's sitting in which seat.
That's right. You'll never be able to prove it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for throwing stuff on the field. It's dangerous. In fact, a lot of stadiums, if they sell you a bottle of water, they'll take the lid. So you can't do that.
Right. So you can do it. You just get water on it.
Yeah, you're just going to spray everybody on the way down. But I don't think that's a good idea to throw stuff on. But I do think it's a good idea for referees to get the call right. I don't have a problem with them getting the call right. Whatever their motivation was, I don't have a problem with that.
I think the bigger question is somebody in their ear going like, "Hey, you guys need to talk about this. This didn't work." Yeah. That's what I would be interested in knowing.
Yeah.
And then eventually what they'll do is, if they throw it on the field again, they'll just put a net up in front of the student section. Like that's what they'll do. Like at I was at a LSU game back in the 80s, and when LSU was running off the field, this is in their own home tunnel. They put they raised a net up like on a field goal in front of the student section, because apparently the student sections at LSU throw stuff at their own team.
Is that right?
Back in the 80s.
That's not shocking.
Yeah. So I think at some point, if they do it again, you're going to see a net in front of the student section.
I think Bud went to one game at LSU at Tiger Stadium, and he said they won the game and then cussed us all the way to the parking lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So he never went back.
That same night I was at the game, I almost got my butt whipped too. So, and they won that game.
That's shocking.
So there you go. Yeah. So anyway.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to B. Ray and Dude on the Speaking Sports. Another word from KRT Athletic Muscle Cream, and we'll be right back. Every championship, every game, every rep, every workout takes its toll on the body. Get ready for the next one. KRT Athletic Muscle Cream, proud partner of the Big 12 Athletic Conference. KRT Athletic Muscle Cream. You got to give it a try. It really works, folks. It really works. I mean, that's the biggest endorsement I can give it. I can tell you from experience. Razorback Dave, B-Ray, Speaking Sports. B-Ray, do you know that with that loss to Tennessee on Saturday, this is the first time Alabama's had 2 losses before November since Nick Saban's first season as the head coach?
Yeah, I saw that on the screen the other day, and I was pretty fascinated by that. But not so much as usually you pay 3 or 4 patsies at the beginning of the year during September.
Yeah.
And then they beat Tennessee, 20 years in a row. That was really about the only October game they would lose up until those points or up at that point for a lot of years. And they beat Tennessee for, every year under Saban, I think, except that 1-2 years ago. So I wasn't too shocked by that.
Well, they're not as good as they've been in the past, which kind of makes you wonder if that's why Saban decided now's the time to retire. You stop their quarterback and you stop that little freshman wide receiver, they're done because they don't really have any other credible threats on that team.
Well, yeah, and the NIL money's really changed everything because now players have gotten their money and there's no. I mean, you can argue, is there really any incentive to get out there and bust their tails anymore? I don't know. A lot of them think $200,000 or $300,000 is a lot of money going to last them the rest of their lives, and by the time you buy jewelry and automobiles, it's not
I remember thinking
far.
that $5 was a lot of money.
Yeah, I did too.
A long time ago. And we got to high school, it was 20.
So I think that's a dynamic. The money and. The people are like, screw it, I got my money. I don't know.
It's interesting that you say that. KJ Jefferson holds a lot of the passing quarterback records at Arkansas and transferred to Central Florida for NIL money. and has been benched 5 weeks into the season.
He looks like he's 20 pounds heavier than he was at Arkansas.
He just got his money and quit working out, and I guess he's content to do that because you're not going to get to the NFL like that.
No. And so I think you have a little bit of that, and then when you got players making more than assistant coaches and you get that dynamic in the room, I think it changes a lot. And I think from a coaching standpoint, you lose a little control, a little discipline, and I think it's gonna take some people. They got to adjust to it.
Yeah, I really thought Tennessee would beat them better than they did.
Tennessee.
I thought that Tennessee would win that. I never thought Alabama had a chance to win that ball game. And I've got living here in Nashville. I've got a lot of Tennessee friends, and they all call me. Well, what do you think what's going to happen in the game? And I said, I think y'all are going to smoke them. I just think y'all are better than they are. And slowly, but here's that thing. Let me tell you something. The mind, how you think about something and how you feel about something, it has vibrational control over what's going on. And what I mean by that is everybody on that Tennessee football team, in their mind, everybody knows categorically Alabama's not going to be as good because Nick Saban's not there, period. They could have better players right now, but they would not be as good of a team as they would have been if Nick Saban was there. So they, in their back of in their conscious mind, they're thinking, we might have a chance. And then the more you believe that, the better off that you are. And you go in, you get a couple of breaks, and then, you're tearing down a goalpost. Look at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and they've gone from snapping the ball every 8 seconds to running the ball a little bit more.
Yeah, I hate that running a play every 8 seconds. That's
they've
not
kind of
football
moved away.
To me.
They moved away from that because I think it was, if you're front running and you're up on someone, it works awesome. But if you're trying to stall a game out or run some clock or just put together a drive, it's hard to do that because the drives are so quick in that hurry up, and you got to rest your defense too. The defenses get tired at the end of the game, and to me the jury's still out on Tennessee. They beat Florida. That was a game they could have lost. They beat Bama. That was a game they could have lost, but they found a way to win it. Lost on the road with Arkansas. Tennessee's probably got another. They got to go to Georgia and to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So they probably are going to have another loss on them.
What is going to happen to the world if Texas comes into Nashville this weekend and struggles against Vanderbilt and, God forbid, loses?
That is, they may throw the goalpost in the Cumberland River again, and I may go down and help them.
You know what? I may do that too.
I mean, we may be the first two bandwagon jumpers on Vanderbilt ever.
Oh yeah, I've never heard of a bandwagon. I didn't know they never had a bandwagon before.
No, exactly.
Odds are it's probably from the 80s and it's not very big.
Well, if they somehow pull that out, Vandy's going to be bowl eligible.
We ought to go to the game.
Vandy, I'll sit here and watch it on TV on my multi-view with everything else.
I feel you.
But, it's just.
Well, and look at I tell you what, I'll put it to you this way. We'll watch it on multi-view, and if they win, I'll pick you up on my way downtown.
That's what I'm talking about. We'll just go downtown and
I'll just slide through and grab you on the way.
We'll just park somewhere around Rosa Parks Boulevard and just jump on
and
mob.
Listen, I'm guilty of making fun of Vanderbilt, but I'm happy that they're having some success because you know what? They don't quit.
No.
They don't give up. I mean, even when they're getting killed by everybody in the league, I've never seen any quit in any of their teams. And then you kind of got to tip your hat to the people that will commit to go there and play football, knowing it's going to be like that. And then now they got a guy in there that has made them believe that they can accomplish something. I mean, what are they? One win away from a bowl game.
And they lost on the road to Georgia State.
Yeah.
Which is at the bottom of the Sun Belt. I mean, that's a game
crazy.
that, they could be bowl eligible right now. They could be thinking about 7 or 8 wins instead of 6 or 7. and which gets Clark Lee Coach of the Year.
That might be anyway.
If they were to somehow figure out a way to beat, I think we were looking today. They got Auburn.
Let's see. They got the rest of their schedule is Texas, Auburn, South Carolina, LSU, and Tennessee, and they will be at home for Auburn and Tennessee. Not that that's ever really mattered, but you watch now. They'll put some seats, some people in the seats for Auburn, and probably for Texas too, and hopefully, they'll take a little bit of dose of reality, and not let that quell the enthusiasm. I mean, you're not supposed to beat Texas. Texas is supposed to be an elite. I mean, God love you if you do, but I don't think anybody should be upset if they don't beat Texas Saturday. But I would be upset if they didn't beat Auburn the next week.
Think about this. They got 5 games left.
Yeah.
Texas at home, at Auburn, South Carolina at home, at LSU, Tennessee.
Auburn and South Carolina are definitely winnable.
And Tennessee's winnable.
Yeah.
At the end of the year. I mean, Tennessee doesn't play well on the road under Heupel.
If I tell you, Tennessee will pull an LSU. If Tennessee has a chance to be in the SEC championship game, that'll be a tough out for Vanderbilt. But if they're out of the championship game, they could potentially come in and lay down for sure.
But I mean, it's Texas, South Carolina. I mean, Auburn, South Carolina, Tennessee. They all look like they're winnable games, and so they got to get one of them. Auburn doesn't look that tough. Auburn's probably the best bet. But they do have South Carolina coming in here, even though South Carolina is playing better.
So the Texas
have to get one of these.
Yeah, the Texas loss jumbled up to top 25 again, which is okay. Here's my thing though. I want to know why. I understand Oregon moving to number 1, except that I'm not really sure why they were that high in the first place. But I get Oregon at number 1. But how is Penn State not number 2 at 6-0? Miami is at 5 at 7-0. Got Ohio State ahead. Well, I'm going to answer my own question. I'm going to try not to. Miami's 7-0. What am I looking at? Penn State, Miami, Iowa State, Brigham Young, Indiana, and Pittsburgh, and Army and Navy are all undefeated. And I get why maybe Army and Navy's not up there, but when we talk about it all the time, but look at teams like Army and Navy. They're sitting there undefeated, and they're 23-24 because they were not high up in the poll to start with. If Army and Navy had been number 1 and number 2 at the beginning of the year, they'd still be number 1 and number 2.
Well, Georgia blew out Clemson. I mean, Tennessee lost to Arkansas on the road. LSU lost to USC. I mean, why are Iowa State, BYU, Indiana? Why they're all leading their conferences?
Yeah.
Why are they ranked below Clemson or Tennessee? I don't understand it. And I guess this is, if you look at them and said, okay, if Tennessee played Indiana, do you think Tennessee would win? Well, I don't know if they would. Depends on where you play the game.
And I'm looking at the Big 12 standings. BYU is at they're tied with Iowa State at 4-0 in the conference. And then you got a host of teams at 3-1. Kansas State, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, Colorado are all in there tied for 3rd at 3-1. And then there's a few teams that are 2-2. Arizona State, TCU, West Virginia. But I mean, Kansas, and the only teams that are ranked in the Big 12 are BYU, Iowa State, and Kansas State, and the highest ranked team in that bunch is Iowa State at 10. But Iowa State and BYU would make the playoff if it was today. Problem is, they're eventually going to have to play.
Well, they won't play to the Big 12.
But even if they play at the Big 12 championship and they're still 10 and 11, the loser's out.
Yeah, but I think both of them get in the playoff. If BYU's undefeated and Iowa State's undefeated when they get to the playoff, the Big 12 championship, they're both going to get in the playoff.
How you figure?
Well, I just think
okay,
Big 12
but
get 2 teams in.
If that happens though, if some of these other teams are still undefeated, who gets left out?
Well, the group of 5.
And I think Indiana's still undefeated as well.
Yeah, Indiana's still. I'm pulling up their schedule. The group of 5 only is going to get one in, and that includes the military academies.
Yeah.
If they both are undefeated,
How big will the Army-Navy game be at the end of the year if they're both undefeated going into that game?
Both. Yeah, where the winner gets in a playoff, like the Group of Five playoff. The
In
Group
an
of Five
election year, an Army-Navy going to one of the Army-Navy teams going to the playoff.
So this week, Indiana's got Washington at home, at Michigan State, Michigan at home, at Ohio State, and then Purdue. So
they could be humanized by the end of the season. Or, if they're good, they beat Ohio State and Michigan, they're going to be in the top 5.
They're in the playoff.
At undefeated, they're getting they may be getting a bye if they're in the top 5.
Yeah.
I mean, because wouldn't they, who would be if they beat, well, I guess Penn State's still up there.
Yeah, the winner of the Penn State, Indiana.
If Indiana won out to the championship game, it'd be
yeah.
But they're both going to be in the top 10 at that point because they're both undefeated.
But to get the bye, you got to win your conference.
Yeah, I'm just more talking about being in than not.
Oh, they're going to be in if they're 11-1 in the Big Ten championship.
Yeah,
they're in.
Yeah.
And then
you know what you don't hear much about? I mean, other than Oregon, what's the highest ranked West Coast team besides Oregon?
Well, Washington's not ranked.
Nope.
I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you.
Probably the farthest west team is Boise State
or BYU.
Yeah, BYU, Utah. Okay, so. So let's see. Oregon. See, that's the thing. Well, I guess they beat Ohio State, though. You got to give them that. But we're going to find out how good Ohio State is because I'm not sure they've played anybody either.
Except Oregon, and they lost.
That's what I'm saying. They lost, but they only lost by a point. We don't know how good Ohio State is yet. We'll find out. But, I mean, and Oregon's still going to have to play Michigan, too.
Right.
I guess, is Oregon in the Big Ten?
Yep.
That's okay. So that's why.
So you got Ohio State, Nebraska. They're going to beat Nebraska. Then they got at Penn State. Then they got Indiana at home, and then at Michigan. I mean, Ohio State's got a little wood to chop here. They're not.
Yeah.
The Penn State game, the Indiana game, and the Michigan game are going to be big games for them.
Yeah. Yeah. They've got some road to chop out. That's for dang sure.
Oh yeah.
So. What is have you looked at what are you betting any this year? Do you get into that?
No, I don't do that.
Probably better. I've done it. I have not lost any money personally. When they first started doing it, I built a FanDuel account up to $500 on a $25 free play, and I did the same thing with DraftKings. To $600, cashed them both out, and I've just been playing off that $25 for the last year and a half.
Oh wow!
So I'm doing all right, but I'm light, son. I'm like $1, $5. Well, you can make a little bit of money. I mean, you bet $1 on a 5-16 parlay, still pay $15, $16. I mean, it's 16 to 1. That's a good payback.
I think a lot of people do it. I think a lot of people do it that way. I think it's just a fun thing to do on the weekends, and honestly, I'm in the finance business, and I just don't want to disclose it to my
don't
bosses.
Like giving it away. Yeah, I get that. I get that. Austin, when he was working in Arkansas, he didn't bet. He just didn't want the illusion.
The scrutiny.
The scrutiny. Big games this weekend. Let's look like Pittsburgh's going to take their undefeated record into Syracuse, or actually they're going to host Syracuse.
That's a W for the Panthers.
Ohio State and Nebraska. Nebraska's sitting there at 5-2. They don't seem to be very good.
No.
Navy is going to host Notre Dame. We'll find out how good Notre Dame is this weekend. And then that's another mindset game. Notre Dame's sitting there thinking, it's Navy,
Oh yeah, that's the one you're chopping up for a W at the beginning.
And
of the year.
I'll give you an example of why that works. We were in Arkansas, had to come to Nashville to play Vanderbilt one time, and it seemed like Vanderbilt's only on Arkansas' schedule when they're rebounded and actually got a decent team. And we were. I think we even had McFadden and Jones on that team. It was that team we brought up here, and we got behind and and it looked like they were about to win. And they were about to kick a field goal to put it out of reach. And I looked over at Austin. I said, son, it's still Vanderbilt. And I kid you not, on the next play, they fumbled to Jerry Franklin. He ran it back for a touchdown. We got the ball back and scored again and won the football game. But that mindset is the thing, man. If you can't shake that monkey off your back when you got that, it's hard to overcome. And so it's going to be interesting to see, like in a Notre Dame Navy game. Notre Dame's going to have that mindset that it's just Navy. Well, if Navy can overcome the mindset that it's Notre Dame and be as maybe good as they are, they got a chance to win that ball game.
Right.
I don't know what the spread is. It doesn't show the spreads here. Indiana's undefeated. They're taking on Washington. This will be a good game here. Ole Miss and Oklahoma, 11 o'clock ESPN.
Yep.
Oklahoma's at 4-3. They're gonna have to go to the Grove. Ole Miss probably wins that game, I would think. It's hard. Hard to tell what Ole Miss has got. You know, they were like in the top 10 early on. They were like 7 or 8, something like that.
Yeah.
And then they just got a couple of bad losses, and now they're not.
Ole Miss is a mirror image of their coach.
Yeah,
and I like Lane Kiffin, but you just don't know what you got.
Winthorpe. He always reminds me of that character from Trading Places.
Yeah, Winthorpe.
Coleman. It was a bad dream. Now, let's see.
But
Oregon's got to play Illinois, and they got them at home. But Beetle is doing pretty good with that Illinois team. They're 6-1, 3-1 in the conference. BYU's got to go to Central Florida. They should win that ball game. And this is a big one in Tuscaloosa this weekend, Missouri and Alabama. Two teams that
huge game.
Probably when you saw that on the schedule early in the year, you thought, But now, Alabama's worked its way back a little closer to Missouri. Ought to be an interesting ball game. And I'm going to tell you, I'm calling it right here. Florida State beats Miami Saturday.
Yeah.
There's no reason in the world that they should, but that's just, I've been watching football for 60 years, and that's how the football gods work. And it would not shock me at all for Florida State to beat Miami this weekend.
Yeah, Florida State needs something. And back to the kind of talking about the Alabama-Missouri game, the 12-team playoff is making these games later in the season more meaningful for more teams. Back during the 14 playoff or even during the BCS, this Missouri game, Alabama game wouldn't mean anything.
True.
But now it means something because you got a playoff spot, a potential playoff spot for both. So, wasn't sure how I felt about the playoff expanded to 12, but making these games interesting late in the year with consequences has been a pleasant surprise to me.
Well, I can tell you where you're going to start hearing the complaints about that.
Somebody's going to complain.
No, well, I can tell you what the complaint's going to be, and because I've been playing NCAA football on PlayStation 5, and you get to the end and you go to the playoff, and even when you get the first round bye, you have to play 2 more games just to get the championship game. So there's 4 weeks there of playoff football. It's going to be a grind.
Yeah.
Especially if if you don't get the bye and you're having to win your way to the championship, you got to win 4 games to be national champion if you don't get the bye.
But I think in the FCS.
Oh, they've done it for years. Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, I think 24 teams make the playoffs, actually.
Yeah, they've been doing it that for years.
Yeah, and the top 8 get a bye, and then the 16 play the first round. But same thing. It's going to be a lot of football.
Yeah.
But, hey, the players get paid now, so they can do it.
It'll be fun to watch, too.
Oh, yeah.
Florida State. I'm calling it here, folks. Florida State beats Miami this weekend. I have nothing to go on except that's just how the football gods are.
Especially with that rivalry.
What's that say? God wouldn't do that to me. Yeah, well, he'd do it to you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly right.
Penn State's going to go to Wisconsin. That'll be a tough game for Penn State. That'll be a good test for them. And then
Wisconsin's down a little bit.
LSU's got to go to College Station and play Texas A&M. That's always a tough place to go.
That's a huge game.
And that'll be second road week in a row for LSU.
The winner of that game has an inside track to the playoff.
Without a doubt. Because neither one of them have much schedule left after that. And they only got one loss because now everybody in the conference has a loss.
And 3 or 4 teams get in. That's right.
Let me rephrase that. A&M does not have a conference loss. A&M is undefeated in the conference right now.
They've got LSU and Texas at home. An
LSU victory would tighten that race up a lot. I mean, you're talking potentially 6, 7, 8 teams tied at 10-2, trying to decide if they're going to get to the playoff.
Yeah. Right.
So, I don't know. It's fun. I enjoy doing it. I know you're trying to get to the hockey game, so we're going to wrap it up a little early tonight, but appreciate you coming on. We're going to be here next week. We're going to have Andy Whittier, member of the USA men's bobsled and skeleton team working towards the Olympics in 2026. He's actually a former FCS football player, B-Ray, and he's going to come on. He's got a lot of insight into what's going on in college football right now. I'm excited to talk to him. But we're going to get that going next week. If you want to join me, I will send you the invite. It'll be fun to sit and talk to him.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us this week. You guys have a great week. Get out and watch a football game. We'll see you next week.